Can you explain the novel's title?
I can try. The novel's complete title is Transgressions, her story, his story, a love story, a war story. Let me start off with the main title, Transgressions, not the subtitle. Transgressions, of course, suggests perhaps sin, although I don't intend that so much, but crossing over boundaries. H.D. made a film later in her life with Breyer and Kenneth McPherson, her lover, at the time, in the early 30s, called Borderlines. She was fascinated with the idea of boundaries and crossing them, making them vague, blurring them. The most immediate boundary or transgression that we have in the novel is the going across, the transgressing of the Atlantic Ocean when when Hilda Doolittle comes to first France and then England, where she will meet Richard Aldington, and the present of the story actually begins. So you have that crossing over. You have the anticipated crossing over when it becomes a war story of Richard's transgression of the English Channel, which he will need to cross in order to go to France and fight on the Western Front. So you have those physical movements. You also have physical movements transgressing, going over, when Hilda and Aldington, together and separately and meeting up, go from England to the continent. They're also interested in crossing the boundaries of language and linguistic cultures. So they are not limited at all by literature written in English, although they themselves are both poets writing in English. But they themselves embrace Greek culture, for example. They both translated from the Greek. Aldington translated also from Latin. And they're deeply engaged with linguistic cultures such as particularly Italy and France. So you have these physical, geographical, logistic transgressions. You also have transgressions, sexual transgressions. They both came to believe in very open sexual relationships, and they defined their early understanding of sexuality through their relationship with each other. And of course, her story, it's Hilda's story, but it is just as much Aldington's story. There are times in the novel when we focus on one character rather than the other, but there are times when the characters' perspectives shift, blend, separate. So it's her story and his story, and at once their story. The first part of the novel is a love story. How Aldington and H.D. will finally negotiate the territory they need to in order to come together. But that story also becomes a war story, because in 1914, in September, Europe was at war, and that is also another territory that they need to negotiate.